LaiSun Keane. I'm in my gallery. At the gallery currently I have a two-person exhibition featuring Eva Lewis and Meghan Murray. Today we are very fortunate to have both artists here and to give a talk about their work. And also we have a special guest, Martina Tanga from the MFA Boston. She's a curator there, and so we are, very excited about this because I think it will be a very interesting conversation. Three very interesting women, right? Two women artists, both graduated with MFA from Boston University just nearly 2 years ago. But look at the paintings. yeah. Okay, so I won't take up too much time, so I will now let you, Martina, take charge.
Well, warm welcome to everyone who's joining us virtually, and we're excited to be in the galleries today to talk about your work. What a wonderful opening last night.
It was nice. It's
So I think we'll start with the fact that you both finished your graduate program at BU just 2 years ago, and that's where you met and had a really close relationship. And take us back there and how you really came to your practice at BU and formed this really close relationship and exchange of ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were accepted to the painting program at Boston University, their MFA program, back in February of 2020. So, so we definitely, things didn't go exactly according to plan, and it was like, we both committed and were accepted, and it was really exciting, but it was like, is this huge adventure that I'm about to embark on and huge commitment that I'm about to take going to be what I expected it to be and what I want it to be, and I'm going to get everything out of it that I need for my work, that I need for my personal growth and all those things. And so, going in was, and not knowing anyone, and I'm local, so it wasn't too much of a shift for me, but Eva was coming from Ohio, so I made a point of reaching out to her.
I was going to say, the first person I ever talked to in the program, Meghan had messaged me.
It's like, hey, do you want to get drinks?
Yep.
Hang out, and
I was like, oh, that's awesome that she would reach out and try to hang out with me. She doesn't know me, it would be a weirdo. And so we did. We went out and we had conversations, and then it kind of just blossomed from there. It was kind of like someone to rely on. I knew she was going to be there. I knew she'd be able to talk to me. So it was from there that we started to form our relationship and started talking about painting, obviously, as soon as we could.
Yeah, and I think both being representational, primarily figurative painters, we could speak to that, but kind of coming in for a reckoning and a change in our work and really questioning everything was super productive.
Well, I think both of us were going into the program elevate the narrative of our work, kind of trying to find our voice in our work and see what that meant in painting for us. And so lots of trial and error, I think, on both ends for our whole program, but in a positive way, because we could be in that conversation with one another.
Yeah. And that's the place to experiment. You were trying out new things. And you had a studio space right next to you.
Pretty much across the hallway for the first year, and then the second year we were kind of on kitty corner on a bigger room, which was wonderful.
So we couldn't go into each other's studios, so I have all these photos of Meghan sitting in the framework of her door, and we're just talking and far away.
Because during COVID we had more strict policy on sharing spaces and things like that, so we're all masked in the hallways, and our studios were private, so we couldn't share that type of space, but sharing as much space as we possibly could. And the second year was a little bit more lenient, fortunately, with the COVID restrictions. And I had never met people, in Eva of course, but then our entire cohort became very close, and I never met people who talked about painting the way that I felt about painting. So there was just that immediate connection of these people would rather be in the studio on a Friday night than anywhere else. And I was like, okay, yes, I found my people I'm exactly ready to be. So being able to connect over that passion is
amazing. And so what was it about the BU program that really helped shape both your voices?
For me, well, I know going into it, I really wanted more of the conversation, and the space especially was important because a lot of schools were shutting down their studio spaces, and so it's kind of like we're keeping our studio spaces. We'll have that time. We'll have that space.
It's like a sacred space.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's kind of like, what else are you gonna do? You can't go out, so you're gonna hunker down and you're gonna paint.
Yeah.
And then also the teaching opportunities they had there. I know Meghan was our GA for our program or our year. And so just being able to have those different opportunities to kind of be active in our community in different ways was really important, and that BU provided us. And then also I feel like the showings we got to do, we had to do duo shows, we had our thesis show, there were different things we were required to do throughout the program that helped us understand how to work with one another, how to hang things, how to photograph our work, different aspects that you don't usually think about until you have to do them.
Right, quite practical.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And then speaking, of course, to the cohort itself and how close we all got, but then also our faculty were so absolutely wonderful. Lucy Kim and Josephine Halverson and Mark Stevens, everyone there was so just the really intense interrogation of the work. We're getting studio visits so often with our faculty, but then also with visiting critics and visiting artists and everything like that. Getting to do the lecture series was a really wonderful part of that program. So getting to have all of these different voices and kind of, which is just truly a challenge to weed through a little bit, and you kind of start to understand how what is actually important to me, what am I going to pick out of all of this input, because that ends up, once you leave the program, that ends up being such a big
you're on your own. You've got to find yourself.
Exactly. And strengthening your own voice, I feel like in the studio was a big part of that, of having all of those voices and then being able to here I am, I can think for myself, which is challenge my own work on my own, and that's what an amazing transformative experience.
So I think from the works here in the gallery, there are so many wonderful synergies between both the work, but you do have very distinct identities. I think there wouldn't be any mixing. It's like I could tell Meghan your work and I can tell Eva your work, and I wouldn't be mix them up. But let's talk about some of the synergies, and that your subjects, because they're all figurative paintings, are in various degrees of self-consciousness and between childhood and early adulthood, and a lot of identity-based sort of explorations, and thinking of the idea of becoming, kind of this ongoing process, a lifetime process. It doesn't. But we start from when we're born, and we are in this process of becoming. So can you, you're working with photography, and you're capturing these moments fixed in time. And there's quite specific kind of freezing of time, even in this process of becoming in both of your works. So can you talk about a little bit how you render this, out of a continuum of evolution, the moments that you picked, and I think to varying degrees we can talk about nostalgia, both of your works. They have very different tones, though, I have to say, but there is some of that. So talk me through some of those freezing and then looking back and sort of temporal shifts of evolving.
Yeah, my work is very specifically about nostalgia of the archive and the object, and a very specific set of not only time in childhood, but also time in mid-century America, generation a couple generations ago, or things like that. So it is very specifically about nostalgia, and then fixing that in time. I think some of the media that I really enjoy that I think influences my work are period pieces, or I got really into Mad Men. I was pretty late to the game on Mad Men, but really loved it. Surprisingly, I feel it's so natural with a natural interest. And one of the things I love about that type of media, with a movie musical or something like that, is that they are So take like Grease, for example. Grease is like a movie musical based on a stage musical that was made in the 70s based on the 50s. And it's set in that 70s time. So there's always these things that are like really specific that there's weird like tension between like this, essentially the style of like 70s does 50s or like 2000s does 60s for Mad Men's sake, right? Yeah. There's always going to be these little things of like, well, you know, 60s eyebrows weren't exactly like that. Or like one of the things with like costume design and like in set design and in those types of things are like, okay, we go into this period as if everyone has just bought the newest set of like furniture. Yeah. Like everything is exactly new, exactly for the period, as if no one's still has like a couch from the 40s, right?
Right, yeah.
So all of those things are like, and there are moments in that type of media that are pointing out like this disconnect between the current viewer and like what we know about those characters, like Mad Men, talking about like, well, you know, they say cigarettes are bad for you, or, like things like that. Like they have an entire episode that is just about the lunar landing, and like what that we as a contemporary viewer are like dealing with SpaceX and like a completely different period of space travel and things like that. And so looking at that, I think it adds a completely different lens to viewing something with nostalgia, right? So I suppose there's like that aspect, and then fixing in time with childhood also lends to that awkwardness of like because my work is based on essentially anonymous photography, it's like, oh, this person could still be out there alive right now, and this could be their childhood photo. It's completely removed from them. So like, what does that mean? It is very awkward, like separation of the context.
Yeah.
But Eva's work is like nostalgic in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Just like very rosy.
Right, definitely making more of like, I feel, especially now that we were talking about some of this earlier too, like thinking about social media, I feel like we see so much of representation of women in social media, and I'm influenced by Renaissance paintings and how they show women, and so I feel like I was really focused on the now of like, okay, well, what's happening in front of me and what am I romanticizing? Like they were romanticizing those stories of goddesses and mythology, and so that's kind of fixing on my peers and like romanticizing our moments together, and just trying to kind of like understand how to compose those things in a way that is interesting, but then also it can be sort of relatable for people that are within the same age range, or that are women or female identifying, and they're able to kind of connect with these people that I see in such a indulgent lens almost. So it's like kind of nostalgic it was especially nostalgic when I was painting them in Boston, because I wasn't with them at the time directly, but just kind of nostalgic for these moments we create together of going to the lake or having a picnic or making dinner together, or the different things that we do, and kind of just capturing those moments in time and fixing my focus on emphasizing what I love about them and identifying with them and being with them.
So maybe the audience might not know, but you're painting a group of friends that you grew up with, very intimate to you.
Yes.
And you have a lot of history with them because you've known them for a long time, and you're still very much connected to them. And
yes.
So yeah, like nostalgia works on both like the now, like you're really like trying to capture a moment that maybe as you grow up you might grow apart, and then this moment of early, late childhood, early adulthood is like incredibly special.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as I got into my undergrad, which is where I was introduced to them, kind of growing up as an adult with them and finding that community of women was really big for me, just because I had looked up to so many women throughout high school, and I had very close friends, but there's always certain expectations or certain relationships that fall apart, but these people to me were very strong, and they were really accepting and open, and I thought that community was just so wonderful to have with them. And so I feel that like I want to represent them and show that because of my intimacy with them. And I know that other people feel the same way in connection with women. And so kind of trying to show that beauty in relationship with female identifying peoples is like important to me to show through them.
Mm-hmm. And Meghan, you don't know your subjects most of the time.
Yeah, pretty much all the time. They're totally anonymous, gathered from this weird commodification of this nostalgia, exactly what we were saying, of like the found photo and you know, the one memory that's really intimate then becoming a stand-in for a whole generation, right? So yeah, it's interesting. There's an intimacy that I like almost kind of fabricate in painting. You know, these paintings take a really long time, so poring over this, like sticking with that same image is a little bit obsessive, and then they become like this weird, like falsified family album. I have all of my little friends that I've kind of accumulated, and I love them all so much. And I tend to stick very true to the actual photograph because I love the photograph so much. I love that like object. I think it's already like I tend to be drawn to things that already like they feel like they already are paintings. I just have to make it. You know what I mean? Which feels like a very specific experience. But like I've been. I started painting really young, so I think that I'm really lucky to have been supported and exposed to like an art historical kind of experience and understanding and a love for that. So I feel like I'm able to recognize compositions and color and things like that, and like pull from those. Like, no, these are going to be like this. Yeah, no, they're just so indulgent to paint, and I love the whole process.
But yeah, yesterday you also said that you are using these anonymous people to look at your own family a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it's a way for, it started with an interrogation of, not necessarily interrogation, but like an appreciation of my own family photo album. I've always been a very sentimental person, and for still one of the last generations where I can look back at family photos of my own childhood and can flip through those, and like even my early childhood to like maybe the age of 10, there are like printed photographs, and that was the way that you developed film, right? And we have like these giant family photo albums that you can flip through, whereas like my little brother, who's only 5 years younger, doesn't really have that same experience because some of his childhood photo is like digital, right? And that experience of going through memory and having that nostalgic experience, sentimental experience is completely different. It's like flipping through a phone, or flipping through like those albums. They're not really albums; they're like pixels, right?
Yeah,
right. So I think, and I tried painting from the personal photograph, and it was something to experience. I felt like it was really important to do, but it felt maybe a little too close to home or a little too sensitive, and I don't think that was necessarily pertinent to the project or like to this like whole series that I've been working on and this mode of working. It felt more, it felt much broader than that, and it feels like doing these is still a way of looking at the personal photo, like looking at all of us as a way of looking at one of us. That's interesting.
And Eva, you also use photography in your work, quite, kind of deliberately.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. I will always, whenever we're doing an excursion or something, I'll have like my phone to the side. My friends are so used to like just whipping my phone out and taking a photo of them in a moment that I find, or asking them to pose for me. I do like creating certain narratives, like the hot tub painting. It's like a collage of different photos, and then I like setting up photos or taking photos in the moment and working from those. So I find that using my phone helps me capture those moments because I did learn painting in a more traditional sense of working from life. So I can't always necessarily like lug my oil paint around or even my sketchbook. So it's nice having something that's so accessible. And both my friends are the ones I paint the most are actually photographers. And so they are also, thinking about photography. They are much better photographers than I am. But I do, it's nice being inspired by what they do. It's funny, I was just looking at one of their works and they're taking pictures of food, like I'm painting food, and so it's like we have these shared moments that we like to capture together. But then from the photographs, what I like to do is do drawings and edit and compose that way through my line drawings. And I find that process to be really important for what I do, just because it takes it a little bit away from the photograph in a way, and creates that intimacy that I want to have. That photograph allows me the chance to have a reference, which I really appreciate, for space and for accuracy. But then I really like working and creating these drawings and then going from there and kind of utilizing color and the way that I like to play around with paint and space in a more intuitive way with the oil paint. So photography is really important as my beginnings, but then it starts to kind of, I pull away from the directness of the photograph.
Right.
Yeah.
And yesterday we talked about the cropping, which is
Yeah.
really intentional in your work.
Definitely.
Because it allows you to focus on very specific details. And
like little moments. Yeah, I like to. Sometimes I'll crop. Like I'll take the photo cropped. Sometimes I'll take it larger. But all around, I'm really looking at these little moments of. How they're holding things, how they're going through the chip bag, or how they're grabbing at the food. So I really enjoy that kind of that detail where it feels more, not quite tunnel vision, but it's kind of exactly what I'm seeing happening in front of me. It's I know what's going around me, but I'm looking at this moment, and so that's what I like to capture. I like to paint. Are those detail moments with them?
Yeah. And moments of just sort of being and of, eating and, self-sustenance, caring.
Yeah, definitely.
Oneself.
Right. Kind of sharing that, one thing we do love to do together is eat together and cook together, and so, or, going to the lake, we do a lot. So it's kind of just like, what little snacks are we bringing, and why is that specific to us, or, I like being able to capture those little moments of, I like to think about those being very special to those people, and so capturing that detail and thinking about like, oh, well, she's getting the Capri Sun and the Uncrustable, and that's the snack for the day that we're all having together. So I like being able to showcase those moments. Yeah.
And Meghan, your work, the photos you're taking, they're sort of, some of them are much more kind of sporadic, but some are staged in a kind of particular way. Do you crop the photos you just?
I do everything as closely to the photo as possible. Especially, so it's very intentional in, again, admiration of the actual object, and so you'll see with the blue tutu ballerina that people can look at online or in the gallery if you want to come visit, or these two over here they do feel very staged, and they feel very almost theatrical in that there's kind of a shallow space. And I think it has to do with how you're posing the kids in front of the Christmas tree, or what I think it ends up being kind of shallow and very posed, but then kids always end up you know what I mean? There's not the attention span is not always. And then with the ballerinas, we're posing, we're playing with the thing that we have in our hands, and so it does end up being kind of and again, with that mode of photography that isn't a digital camera, you only have so many images on that reel. So it's kind of just taking the one, and hoping that it's a good one, and you won't find out for another month, right? Until
until finished. And having kids of my own, sometimes just the refusal to cooperate. Or I take a picture and they're not.
You'll get what you get.
They're not great.
So if you want the moment you're taking, even if they're crying like your little cowgirl,
take whatever you can.
Yeah, right.
That's always and there's usually one of the really cool things of owning the actual object. I kind of insist upon purchasing these pieces on eBay or Etsy or antique stores or whatever, is that often they'll have the date, the photo developed date or anything like that, and sometimes they'll have a little description on the back by the photographer. Maybe they're sending it in the mail, or they need to know like who it is and like the year. Like we would keep track of our baby photos. Like, is that my brother or is that me?
The date.
Yeah. So they'll often sometimes they're really funny. Like I think the reverse of the photo of the crying cowgirl did say crying cowgirl. Like people are sharing like inside jokes of like, oh, she's awfully stubborn at this age or something like that. That they're sending to their relatives.
And Meghan, so you work from analog specifically because it's like intentional, and your photographs either are ones that, or your paintings like derived from photographs, are some that maybe might get shared on social media. They do circulate, but analog photographs are circulating too in the way that you're finding them on like eBay. So and this might be an old person question, but like, how do you feel like today about? I'm very much aware of this as a mother, and how there's a whole generation of young people who have their lives documented online without consent, and that's just a reality of the world we live in. So and it's sort of in your own, drawing on your own experiences, but like awareness of this saturation of images that we live in today that's really heightened, and through social media, it's a currency that is just kind of circulating, 100-fold around us.
Yes.
And how do you think about that in your work, or in your lives in general?
Yeah, I mean, personally, like in relation to my work, I do feel like I in a similar vein of portraying yourself on social media in a positive light, or in a light that you want to see someone from a certain angle, or what you're doing in that moment that might be like more elaborate than something you do day to day. I feel like those are the kind of paintings I try to make or think about making, or just the way I am romanticizing certain moments. I feel like is in relation to the way that we portray ourselves on social media. For a long time too, I was only doing vertical paintings, which after a while I realized was so Instagram of me, where it's like we look through this vertical, exactly. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's really like so I switched it up because I was like, that's really weird. But it's really influential on me, and because it's around me so much, and I do think about portraying these people in a way that, although I am trying to show their authentic selves, I am trying to show them in a way that is romantic and really like bright and bold and confident. And so that is in relation to what I see online. Although things that we see online tend to also be edited and not reality, and oversaturated with ideals of the feminine body. And so I do try to portray people, or specifically my friends, in a way of authenticity, and not trying to edit the way that they look, but trying to just present them as themselves, which is hard to find online. We were talking earlier about how it kind of takes time, and I don't know if it's getting older and living with social media, or knowing how much people can edit and filter themselves. But the nice thing about social media is that you can find communities of people, body positivity communities, queer communities, clean face like makeup communities, like different types of portraying yourself. And before, I feel like it was so saturated with that societal ideal, and now there's more people coming out and saying like, hey, actually not everyone looks like this. Like, we actually all have stretch marks and cellulite, and we wake up with our hair a mess. So there's definitely ways to weed through it, but it's still, I mean, there's so many people in the world that it's hard to differentiate. And a difficult thing to kind of navigate, I think, at first, as a young person, especially, who's trying to find their way through.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's not only the conversation with portraying the female body and like the saturation of imagery of the female body and things like that, or the female presenting body, but there's also the oversaturation of images in like say Instagram, for example, as a tool for artists, of like feeling the need to essentially create images in the way that we digest them, which is so unrealistic and so not sustainable for artists, especially, you know, I mean, any artist who's making work that even takes a second thought. I mean, you just, when you post it, so quick and instant, and then it's over. Yeah. And these paintings take a really long time. I know Eva paints a lot faster than I do, but still, they're really labored, and you know what I mean.
Returning to the question, you know, the idea of intimacy, like painting is such an intimate process.
Yeah.
You know, that you spend time with the canvas, you're mixing your paints. It's you know, like a real labor of love, like caressing the color. You know,
absolutely. It is incredibly. It's, you know, so many hours, and like even just the preparation of the surface and things like that. Like I tend to I try to do like a batch at once and do a whole bunch of surfaces, and then there's like this amazing feeling of like potential of like these white canvases, and like knowing exactly what images I'm like really interested in at the moment, and knowing it so intimately, and going to the studio every night after work, you know, and then it's one image, and it's really interesting how it just kind of narrows down. But incredibly intimate process for sure.
One thing we were talking about was kind of going back to just social media and the things we consume. We were talking about, because being born in mid-90s, you know, we didn't directly have the internet until we started getting older, but we did have America's Next Top Model. We were talking about those expectations and like what it means to be a woman and how you're supposed to portray yourself, and that kind of being our like early stages of like expectation and what should be seen, and how people are turning things out in a way, and kind of getting that immediate satisfaction from like, you know, watching these shows of idealized people.
Yeah, especially the dawn of reality TV.
Yes,
part of our
Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. Yes.
So that was like totally different, but yeah, and then that just being multiplied tenfold with social media. So I really feel for kids these days.
I know.
I'm begging me, when can I get a phone? She wants me to agree. She's like, when I'm 13, yes, and I'm like, I can't think
gosh. I really, it's just, you know, when you're growing up and your brain is still developing, like you're so, and you think you, like a lot of the images that we're like presenting, you think you own the world, and you're so some can be so confident and can feel, and you're already, I don't know, it's a really delicate thing.
It is, and I feel
like taken very seriously.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's just so much you can see online, so many things and so many different ways. It's not only just like presentation of self, but how much are you working, what are you doing day to day, and trying to keep up with everybody. It's like, it's exhausting, especially at a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. So you both identify as feminists, and I do too, but I was wondering, I think we're in the fourth wave, and maybe want to comment on the idea of the fourth wave. There's been so many waves.
There's been a couple waves,
yeah. And what does feminism mean to you?
Wow. What a bold, oh my gosh, to narrow it down to one statement. But it's really interesting to look at the women in my life and generationally, really women and who may or may not identify as feminists, and the different waves of feminism, and their actual lived experience and how those things can vary from each other. But feminism to me is so exciting right now in the fourth wave of feminism, of you know, maybe social media obviously having a big deal to do with it. I think the Me Too movement was absolutely pivotal. I think some of the things that we've been experiencing politically are absolutely pivotal. And then the reaction being amplified by social media can be scary. And some of that backlash can be really scary, but also can be wildly empowering. Of, you know, not only like #MeToo, capital M, capital T, but also like I'm experiencing this thing that I'm going to be able to, you know, either broadcast or, you know, just friend and be like, oh, actually, like, your experience, like, you're doing all the chores in your house, me too, like, you're also, like, you know, like, you're going through this, or like talking about money, like financial, like now all of a sudden there's this beautiful thing of like, I don't know, where my friends and I are having those a little bit more like, you know, honest conversations of like, how do you ask for a raise? How do you like, you know, speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself and your friends and like in the workplace, and that's been pretty exciting. I think that was not a thing that would have happened even in my mom's generation of like, oh no, you don't talk about money with anyone outside of your family, or you know, and then you know her mother before her, like that was she didn't have a credit card. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing how quickly it changes.
Yeah, definitely. And social media, I think, has helped in that way, where like you're saying, where you can relate to one another. You can see that maybe something you're experiencing is not right, and you can kind of get some steps on how to either help, you know, create confidence to talk about that, or to not have that happen any longer, or to stop what's going on in your life that is like oppressing you. And I feel like being able to have those conversations does allow that experience in real life then for you to connect with other women, and to understand that we're all in a community together, and a community that has had to go through all these waves of feminism to kind of be able to represent ourselves in a way that we want to. You think about so many different like jobs women are now trying to express on social media too, like I mean like even like OnlyFans or different ways of promoting themselves. Has been really cool to see, and I feel like that is part of this technology age, where it's kind of being able to push, you know, someone was telling me there was this strip in Boston where they live where it was like all female businesses, and it's like so interesting. I mean that's so awesome, and it's so new, and so that I think is helped and pushed through this idea of like representing themselves on social media and being able to talk and have conversation of how to be a businesswoman and how to put out what you think is important in the world. So yeah.
And again, I mean, now I'm thinking about not to like harp on social media, but I feel like
we're on.
We're on social media.
It's a great tool. It's wonderful. But you know, I think in some of the political things that have happened in the U.S. recently, and how really awful that is, and like setting us back several years, decades, really. I think there are a lot of, and I think during the 2016 election and all of these things, what I was starting to see is like younger and younger women and girls becoming politically active. I mean, going to like the Boston Women's March in 2016. I think that a younger access to social media and to the internet and to internet culture, while it can be very detrimental, can also be, like I was saying, very empowering, and that younger and younger women are becoming really politically active, and active in you know, activism, like, you know, things like that.
You're able to find resources online and websites that guide you.
When I was in high school, that was not something I was thinking about. I was not paying attention to the presidential election. I was not paying attention to like what I had access to. But like now I know all of these, you know, young women who are learning, young you know, people in general who are learning this type of advocacy and language that I had no idea about when I was their age. I think that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, amazing. And so through your work, like, what's the message that you want to send to, like, I don't know, younger people or female identifying people, and or just younger generation?
Meghan? I'm just I know it's so tough to think. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like there's so many things you can say to a younger generation, to female identifying people, especially as you know, as women, we change basically throughout. Our bodies change, our minds change, everything changes throughout your whole life. There's no one set way that you're going to stay, which is a really beautiful thing. I think part of it is just kind of that acceptance of self, and that allowing yourself to change and allowing an openness. I feel like is something I had such a hard time with in high school and middle school personally, where it's like you think that maybe you should be one way, or we were talking about what it means to be a girl's girl, or or the girl who, what was it? Like a pick-me girl. Wait. Yeah,
that's a new thing. A pick-me girl. It's like, so it's like, I don't know. That's what the kids are saying these days. Yeah, right.
A pick-me girl is like.
Eva teaches high school, so she knows better.
Yeah. But it's kind of like the girl who tries to do things to be picked by usually a male gaze.
Okay.
But it's
I'm not like other girls.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Where it's like I think a lot of girls now are seeing though that like we do want to be like other girls.
We actually are awesome.
We like other girls.
Like that internalized misogyny is kind of like finally dissipating.
Yes.
Hopefully a
yes.
little bit.
Yeah.
Where you had to like put down other women to
put yourself
appeal
up.
to
which is more solidarity.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Which is, and I think it can be easy to do with other people, and then I find that if you talk personally with at least with my friends, it's like they're still having a hard time accepting themselves. And I think that does come from just like being able to be open about who you are and what your body is doing and what your mind is changing about, and kind of being in conversation with one another and knowing that you're not alone in all of that. I think is really important to younger generations, I guess.
Yeah, I think that my work starts to it kind of has obviously this nostalgia, this like historical documentation, but I'm trying, and I hopefully someday figure out how to do it more explicitly. But I'm trying to help with a more critical eye of like, okay, I chose to paint this image. What does that mean to like repaint a photograph that was removed from its context, that then stands in for a larger generation, a larger experience, and some of the images are more explicitly critical than others. Things like the toy guns is a very I did an entire show of the collection of cowboy imagery that I have is unbelievable. Of so many cap guns, so many like fake little vests and chaps and hats and things, and everyone dressing like Roy Rogers and Lone Ranger and stuff, and that being a masculine, a hyper masculine identity that was to be aspired to, when in fact it was based on something that was never real. And how that kind of becomes a culture for an entire generation of little boys to look up to, right, and little girls too, of what it means to be like heroic, right, and how sometimes detrimental that can be. I've never been into guns, and that's partially being from New England, where we're a little bit more have a little bit more room on that kind of thing, or like a different attitude than other places in the States. But it's interesting. So I think part of it is coming from New England and coming from this very historical place, pretty blue state, and being pretty liberal, but so addressing this history and loving this history, but also recognizing that it needs to change, like things are changing, and how that can impact what's happening now, and how what we do and how our childhood is now will impact our future.
Yeah, definitely.
Pivotal time. But in your kind of statement, you mentioned a number of sources, including like Greta Gerwig and others, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about those, or kind of we went back to old-timey things and very new things.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that has been really just growing up as a woman and getting connected with women is being able to see more women make movies and be comedians, and that's one thing me and Meghan have been really loving and sharing with each other. And so we were talking about the Barbie movie being such a Greta Gerwig, first of all, just is an amazing director, but then just this very obvious show of feminism through Barbie, through this extremely couple.
Yeah. It's like feminism 101.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, everyone should
Right. That little speech.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Kind of really like hits it on the head. Yeah, exactly. But showing it in the way that we love of like this light blue and pink plastic kind of scene is I think very, very fun to see, and it was especially in relation to Oppenheimer. As that came out, very different, and just like a really fun way to be able to touch on that subject matter and to relate to one another, and bring that conversation back to light.
And I think I love Greta Gerwig. I think that not only the Barbie movie was fantastic, but I love a lot of her other work. Her take on Little Women is my favorite movie. I watch it every year, and I think it's not Little Women as like a story that has translated so many little girls about that growing up, and it's so important. But like her portrayal is so much less about. It's so about being growing up as a woman in this type of society, like Civil War society, where it's like so difficult, but also like that women are deeply funny and deeply like intelligent and capable and ambitious, and so that like some of those speeches in that movie make me cry every time. And Frances, like going back to Frances Hobbs, like deeply awkward and difficult to navigate, like your 20s. And oh my gosh, that's right. So yeah, I think she like hits that tension of how uncomfortable sometimes it can be, and to be both ambitious but also to like not know what you're doing, and having that be kind of embraced and okay, and you're gonna be all right. But it is.
It's funny to think about the remake of Little Women. That now there are the 3 movies. And I like, for me, Little Women is still the one in the 1990s. Right? Like that's Little Women. That's my Little Women.
Yeah, of course.
That's the one that I saw at that time, and the other one I can't identify with. And I loved Greta's new version, but I was also like, it's not right.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like for generations of women, maybe different waves of feminism.
Oh yeah.
What are we looking for? That's interesting.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So then, by talking about the title of the show, which you came through together, which I think ties in with a lot of these threads that we pulled.
Definitely.
Yeah, we wanted something that spoke to like something with the flavor.
Right. So it's Rose
Grenadine. Yes. So Rose Grenadine, if folks aren't aware or haven't made a Shirley Temple recently, it is the kind of widely available grenadine liqueur or like flavoring syrup. But traditionally, grenadine is made with pomegranates, pomegranate juice. So a very beautiful reddish kind of orange color, which you can see in Eva's work, and pink in mine. So certainly having to do with that flavor, that sweetness, a nod to the color, and then also this like artificiality of like presenting as, or like what a woman could be, or what something like being a little too sweet maybe. These really picture perfect things that actually contain a lot more than what they are.
Yeah, a little romanticizing of something, kind of and then overly saturated kind of color.
And then deeply nostalgic, will you use Grenadine to make a Shirley Temple or a Roy Rogers, right? So sweet. We had some last night. They were really great. I miss them a lot.
One of my first introductions to Grenadine was the Tequila Sunrise. So and I remember when someone first gave me that, and I was like, oh my god, that's so pretty. Kind of that like in the moment excitement. That beautiful gradient. That bright color. I just love that kind of like, especially the Shirley Temple. Even we were comparing to the paintings, that shot color of it. It's like amazing. So, but then ultimately, not a pomegranate, a very artificial flavor that is made with the Rose's Grenadine, the brand. So. It's a fun play on kind of the way that we're looking at these different areas of being a woman, or these different time periods of being a woman, rather, and just trying to see them in that romantic, nostalgic kind of light. Yeah.
Great.
Well, it's 1:52, so do you want to wrap up?
Yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us.
And thank you, Martina.
Yeah, thank you, Martina.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, LaiSun.